That was Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross this week saying he'd continue his Section 232 investigation into the national security threat posed by imported cars, trucks, and auto parts. But that auto tariff against the European Union would be put on hold as talks between the U.S. and the EU continue. This is good news for Tennessee Senator Lamar Alexander, who introduced a bipartisan bill this week to delay the proposed 25% penalty. And he joins us now. Senator, welcome.
Thank you, Paul.
You cheered this truce this week between the United States and the EU. Why?
Well, zero tariffs is exactly the right policy. That's what we did with the North American Free Trade Agreement. We implemented nearly zero tariffs over 15 years. And now that we've got a policy of where we're going, zero tariffs, it's time to get rid of the steel and aluminum tariffs, which are driving up the cost of cars and hurting the 136,000 Tennesseans who work in the automotive industry.
All right, but you heard the Secretary Wilbur Ross say this week that he's still going to go ahead with these 232 investigations, which basically are designed to show, to answer the question, do cars that are imported pose a national security threat? Now, do you think that BMWs or Nissans imported in the United States are at all plausibly a national security threat?
No, they're not. Of course they're not. And it's wrong for the president to use that pretext. But, you know, the bread and butter part of this is this. I mean, Tennessee has become, in many ways, the #1 auto state. We've got 929 auto parts suppliers. 50% of the cars we make here are steel. 10% are aluminum. So when the price of steel goes up 40%, as it has since January, think of what that does to our economy in Tennessee and to the jobs in Tennessee. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot with the tariffs, and it's time to do what the president said this week. Zero tariffs is the right goal, and the sooner the better.
Well, are you hearing from the companies in Tennessee that, in fact, their costs are going up or their supply chains are being disrupted because of the steel and aluminum tariffs?
Oh, of course I am. And you saw this week that Ford and General Motors has a big plant in Tennessee. They announced that they were each lost $300 million this year. They have to tell that to their stockholders, and they attributed most of that to the tariffs. So, you know, you can't be in a zero tariffs world, which is where the president wants to go, and raise the price of steel 40% and still make cars and trucks in Tennessee that are competitive to sell in the United States or export around the world, which we do a lot.
How many of the cars do you know off the top of your head that are made in Tennessee? And you got a Nissan plant there. I think you got a Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga and a GM plant in Spring Hill. Mm-hmm.
Right.
How many of those cars are exported outside the United States?
Well, I don't know the exact number, but it's billions of dollars of cars are exported and billions of parts are exported. The real employment in our state is with the 900 plus auto parts suppliers. And the way you make automobiles, a Nissan Rogue will go back and forth with its parts to Canada, to Mexico, and then back to Smyrna, Tennessee before it's finally built. That permits it to be built in a competitive way at a low cost and sold successfully here and then exported around the world.
Okay. Your colleague from Tennessee, Bob Corker, has introduced a bill with a couple of other colleagues to try to take back some of the president's authority to use 232 and that national security definition to impose tariffs. He hasn't been able to get a vote on that with some of your colleagues in the Senate. Why not?
Well, getting a vote on anything's hard in the Senate. I'm a co-sponsor of Senator Corker's bill, but I think the visits we've had with the president, Senator Corker's bill, my bill, all of the activity that we've had in the Senate to say that tariffs are shooting ourselves in the foot, really shooting ourselves in both feet. We have a trade problem, but the way you solve a trade problem is not to shoot yourself in the foot. You find some other way to deal with it. So now that the president has said, let's go to zero tariffs, which is the same thing Japan and Europe are doing with each other over a long term.
Right.
Exactly the same thing we did with the North American Free Trade Agreement. let's head in that direction. I think we've had our impact, and I suspect we'll get a vote as time goes on.
Okay, now the president also saying trying to renegotiate NAFTA. What's your advice to the president on NAFTA? Are you saying let's close this renegotiation as soon as possible so we can have a vote this Congress?
Yes, let's get it done before September. NAFTA's been good for Tennessee. I mean, we've doubled the amount of cars and auto jobs we've had in Tennessee, and it's been good for the United States, in my opinion. The president disagrees with that. Fact is, we're making about as many cars in the United States today, about 12 million, as we did when NAFTA was signed in 1944. The only difference is that we've had about 3.5 million jobs shift, not overseas, but from the Midwest to Tennessee and other states in the Southeast because of right-to-work laws and because it's more competitive. So my advice would be finish the work on NAFTA, modernize it. That can be done. They have some good ideas about changing it, but get it done by September and give us a signal about where these tariffs are going. We need an end to this shooting ourselves in the foot. That's not a good way to solve a problem.
All right, Senator, appreciate your being here. Thank you. Still ahead.